about, I'm gonna tell you how I even came up with this.
Right.
So, good morning, everybody. I'm Marty McNair. I'm from the Jordan McNair Foundation. So some of y'all may remember our story with my son Jordan, passed the 2018 University of Maryland football player. Man, I tell people most of the time, the last time I talked to Jordan was May 28th of 2018. It was basically like, son, I know practice starts tomorrow. Man, hey, have a good day tomorrow. Talk to you later in the week. And always, you know, at college as a father, make sure you keep that protection on.
There
that was
you go.
pretty much it.
Right.
And man, at that point, we pretty much went from the next call I got on the May 29th was Mr. McNair. There's been an incident at, you know, on football field, at football practice today, Jordan had a seizure. Now here's a guy, 6'5", 320 pounds, a size 16 shoe, had never been in the hospital literally from the time that he was born.
Right.
So it was like, what do you mean a seizure? But at this point, you know, I'll go grab his mom, and I'm not a panic button pusher. So it's like, let's get there first and see what happens. And we got to the ER, and basically, man, you know, really, I didn't know anything about a heat stroke, nothing about any type of heat-related injuries or any of that stuff. So basically, I went from, hey, son, have a great day in practice, to, son, if you can hear me, blink your eyes. Son, if you can hear me, squeeze my finger. So basically, man, we literally went from May 29th for getting that call to that Friday. That was a Tuesday, so you figure that Wednesday, man, it literally airlifted Jordan to University of Maryland Shock Trauma Center, which was obviously a better hospital that could be medically equipped to handle the stuff. So we went from Tuesday to literally Friday morning. The doctor said, Mom and Dad, Jordan's liver is 85% necrosis, and if we don't make a decision right now for emergency liver transplant, he'll be dead in 12 hours. Now imagine, I'm like shaking my head like, wait a minute, 85% necrosis, what do you, 85% dead, emergency liver transplant. So it's kind of like in the movies where you see it play out and then it rewinds real quick.
Right.
So I was basically wondering like what happened, because at this point, man, you know, as a father, and I don't know how many of you all are fathers in the room, and one of the main things, if any, and I pray this never happens to anybody, but if anything happens to any of your children, it's always our fault. What did I miss? What didn't I prepare him for? Taught him how to fight for himself, how to stand up for himself, all these things that I taught him amongst his peers, but I never taught him if he felt uncomfortable around coaches or a coach asked him to do something he was comfortable with, don't do it. I always taught Jordan to be a coach. He was coachable. Right. And coachable, all y'all are coaches, y'all know what coachable looks like. Yeah. Coachable says, guess what, if I tell you to run head first through that door, that's what a coachable kid is going to do. Right. And nowadays, that's just not really where sometimes we can do that, and kids can do that to the effect of them losing their lives or leaving it all on the field. So as we kind of went through this whole process, man, I didn't know anything about a heat stroke, didn't know anything, and I'm using the term heat stroke loosely because I pretty much thought that once you got out in the field, or once you got overheated, you basically got in some shade, drank some cool water, and that was pretty much it at that point. So for me, it was basically like, man, you know, I didn't have a clue on any of this. I didn't know what heat, and I'm using the term heat stroke loosely back then. Mm-hmm. I wasn't aware of what heat exhaustion looked like, that it was signs and symptoms. Had no idea of any statistics, right? Didn't know that Jordan fell into predictable statistics, meaning that you were going to lose 2 to 3 linemen at the collegiate level every single year. If you look back from the year 2000 in NCAA to 2018 when he passed, you would literally average about 2 kids per week. Per year. Always on the first day of practice. So I'm going to cover all these things. So as we kind of went through this whole process, man, we got a liver transplant, which was successful, so-called successful at that point. But really, when it came down to it, you have a certain amount of time in the event of you have a heat stroke, you got probably a 20 to 30 minute window to cool a person's core body temperature down, and anything beyond that period is irreparable, i.e., 85% of Jordan's liver was dead Friday. You know, how long did it take? It literally took 1 hour and 43 minutes to get him to the ER with a core body temperature of 106 degrees. Right. But he had went through all of the processes, and at that particular day, everything that could have went wrong did go wrong. So literally, as they say, Murphy's Law was in full effect. Like, if it could have went wrong, it literally did go wrong. The EMTs went to the wrong place. There wasn't any safety equipment on the field. They weren't prepared for this type of injury. They literally just kind of ignored all of his signs and symptoms of a heat exhaustion first. So basically that day they were running gases, very first day of practice. You got your bigs running gases, which I still say in my mind makes no sense for a lineman, because every time you get a snap, you never even go that far. So really, exactly, if that, right? If that. So again, these were just some of the things that I had no knowledge of. I didn't have at this particular time, I had no knowledge of any of the statistics, that predictable statistics. This was at the collegiate level. I had no idea of all the high school and youth players and AAU players that had died from heat-related injuries. Had no idea about any of these things. So Jordan, he lived another week and a half, and at that time, when you're really that sick, they basically call what they call the ICU shuffle. And what the ICU shuffle means that you can't have two bad shifts. You can have a good shift, you can have a bad shift, but when you have that type of illness and you're that acute in regards to how severe it is, basically it may be like very, very minimal signs, very, very minimal progression. Like, okay, his blood pressure may have regulated on that particular day. And literally, man, if you can imagine, they had him hooked up to every single machine you could possibly imagine, from lung machines, which is an ECMO machine, to kidney dialysis machine, you name it. I mean, he was on every life support that could possibly give his body that opportunity to rest. So at this time, you know, one of the things that I kept asking myself, as I mentioned earlier, I missed something. What did I miss while the coaches were sitting at our table during the recruitment time? Because what do? Like every other parent in America, we ask two questions. Anybody know what the two questions are?
Where are they gonna stay? What they gonna eat?
Not at the collegiate level, but just in general. Two questions.
Take care of schoolwork.
Two questions. Every parent that you all ever, whenever you all somebody recruited, kid came to your school, what did the parent ask?
You gonna take care of my kid?
No, take this context out of it. What did the parent ask?
Is he gonna be safe?
What did the parent ask? I wrote a book, and I suggest everybody get it on your way out.
Okay.
Can my child play?
Oh yeah.
Can they play, and why aren't they playing? Am I right?
Yeah.
Right, but we hear it so much, we don't even, utilize it. We don't even, that go past it, because all we want to know is, can they get some time? Or why aren't they playing? And that's pretty much the extent of it. We don't think to ask every security or every safety question, that long list of safety questions that should be long before you worry about whether they playing or not. So while the recruiter or while the head coach a couple days from prior to signing day, they were at our kitchen table. Basically, I asked two questions. Can Jordan get some playing time? And also, what was your stance around mental health and substance abuse? Because that just was the space that I was in at that time. So as we kind of moved on and I started the foundation, man, the grief was beyond describable in a sense. The grief was indescribable. So at that time, day 3 after Jordan passed, I'm like, man, we got to do something. And for me, at that time, like, as a parent, you want somebody to blame. And at this time, like, I got all these coaches around me, and I'm just getting bits and pieces of what happened that day and who said what and who didn't do what. So now, one of the hardest things I have, one of the hardest pieces of emotional maturity I ever had to show, ever. Just from the restraint of not trying to choke somebody out that this up to my kid, to my man here. So at this point, we started the Jordan McNair Foundation, and really the goal was really to, as I mentioned earlier, what didn't I teach him? I didn't teach him to stand up for himself, but really, I didn't teach him self-advocacy. Like I mentioned earlier, I taught him how to be a coachable kid. So as we moved on and fast forward, we started educating parents and all the things that I started to look at in hindsight. Jordan was a 5-star athlete. I literally took him all over the nation, combines, clinics, camps, you name it. Then I started to realize, like, well, wait a minute, did I see any safety equipment on the field? Because nobody definitely talked to me about any type of parent education, safety education, any of that. All I ever did was sit in the stands and watch him participate. Praying that in the event, I didn't even think in the event of, because we just assumed in the event of, they already gonna have it. But when I'm looking at it, I'm like, wow, nobody never said any of this to me. So now one of the things that we wanted to focus on was not only student athlete self-advocacy, however, we wanted to focus on parent education, student athlete education, coaches education. So one of the things is we just kind of went on and we got laws passed, and man, our whole process was totally organic. We thought early on, it's like, man, there wasn't a cold water tub on the field, so we're gonna donate all these cold water tubs, right? And then it's like, okay, We donated over 300 cold water tubs from literally Alaska to
Yes,
Florida.
got
You got one of the recent ones? Yeah, that's our tub. Yeah, thank you. And man, but kids kept dying. So it ain't, obviously it's not the equipment. So I said, well, you know what? Maybe we should let me start speaking more. But then I started thinking like, well, when I come somewhere, what's gonna make anything I say stick? Right? Then I'm like, okay, it's legislation. So then we got the first law passed, we got the second law passed, we got the third law passed, we got our fourth law passed. But the interesting thing about legislation is if you ain't waving no signs saying that this legislation is in place,
Is the law? Nobody knows.
nobody knows. Exactly. And we like that because again, what's important to me may not be important to Mr. and Mrs. Joe America in a sense. So we thought it was that. And then after this third law, then I kept saying kids kept dying because really 40, 50 kids that died after Jordan. Not from heat stroke, but you figure your main culprits when you look at any type of sports related injuries are the 4 H's. You look at heat, heart, hemoglobin, and concussion, and head. So heart attack, cardiac arrest, heat stroke, heat related injuries, hemoglobin, which is any student athletes with sickle cell or anything like that, basically, and then concussions. Those are your 4 main things. And if we're not prepared really to handle these things or educated on them, guess what? They can slip by us or something like that. And that's pretty much what we'll go over today. So as we kind of went through all these different processes, it was an organic process for us all the way through. I was not this smart prior to this happening at all. If you had told me 6 years ago that this would have been my journey, I would have told you you're absolutely crazy. It ain't gonna happen. You're lying. So never thought I'd write a book. Never ever. And I was thinking last night, even when I was thinking, okay, you need to push more. Well, I don't want to take none of these books home. But then I was thinking that I remember Locks had wrote something. Coach Locks had wrote excerpt on the back of the book. And I'm like, all right, that's what I'll use today as the selling point. But it's just a good read that really talks about me as a father, my redemption, how I didn't want my son to experience the things that I experienced. How as a parent and a coach we should protect our student athletes, and not only why, but how. So like I said, y'all flying back, excellent read. I got them for sale next door. But anyway, as we kind of went through this whole process, kids kept dying. And then after this third bill that we got passed, the NIL bill is in Jordan's name. It's another bill in Jordan's name. It's another Baltimore City bill that protects more the student athletes, the park and recreations level in Jordan's name. But the last bill that we got passed was emergency action plans, right? Now, and then I kept doing all these football clinics last year, man, like glacier clinics because we got a tub, we were pushing our tub. And man, one of the things like, I just noticed coaches would keep walking by. Hey, you know what? Hey coach, here's something. What's your safety plan? Oh no, my AT takes care of that. No, my AT. Coaches deflect. And all of these clinics that I was doing, I kept saying, wait a minute, man, ain't nobody talking about player safety. Somebody on my team came up with one good idea. Why don't we make an X's? I say, no, coaches only want to talk about X's and O's. I say, why don't we come up with an X's and O's for player safety? That's it. And that's how we wound up getting to where we are today. So it was luckily, we got a great partnership with the coalition, and basically we do a lot of their coaches training. Like you say, coach, he got a tub from us, but one of the things like, look, man, all we just ask is that you sit in a couple of safety training sessions in regards to that. So as we kind of went along, man, that was really the main thing. So question time, how many of you all, since we got a small group, just kind of tell me where you are, high school, you got an AT, you don't have an AT, or what?
Rodney Salisbury, head football coach at Whitehaven High School in Memphis, Tennessee. We do not have a trainer at our practices every day.
Okay.
The district does not provide it, but I'm severely interested in that. We've had outsourced, and we've got a trainer that used to come, but obviously you want to have the financing to do that. So that's one of the things I want to work on. So I say I'm an advocate of making sure my staff is aware of the things that we have to do. And my kids, don't be stupid. You know what I'm saying? That if you see a kid that's struggling, this not the time to be like, hey, you tough it out. No.
Yep.
It's you stop, so
Totally.
It's being a hero and like, man, you just push through it. No, that's not wise.
Got it.
So just tell people, don't be dumb,
Okay.
And so as players, I tell most of my staff are former players, so I tell them, you know how you felt.
Sure.
So that old school way of, man, just doing, no, we can't, that's not a life that,
We can't do
life
that.
doesn't exist anymore.
Exactly. What about you, Coach?
Baton Rouge, Louisiana. We actually have one through a partnership with a local hospital out there called Oshner. But mainly through sacrifice of people like your son,
Yep.
it's the reason why. I don't know if you ever heard of Remy Hidalgo.
Of course. Yep.
Denham Springs, Louisiana.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
Sure.
So
Of course.
now almost every school out there has a trainer.
Got it.
And we have tubs. And now our philosophy on our staff has been, you feel like you can't go, just stop. If you
Yep.
need, even if it's not water break time, just go.
Yep. Thank you.
And we iterate that to all our coaches.
Cool. What about you, Coach?
Lake Forest, Illinois.
Okay. What's your name?
October.
October? Okay. Coach October. Way to go.
So we have trainers. We have a rotational staff because we have medical students there. So we always have one there, and then maybe a student, in medical profession, but they always have the AD who's certified on call.
Perfect. What about you, Coach? Hey, good morning.
Stop, University of Professional Football. Most recently, at a smaller school as a coordinator, UT Permanent Base in West Texas. We actually had a kid. You talk about the H's. He had a heart condition. We didn't know, and he was in the middle of football game. Fell out.
Yep.
In cardiac arrest.
Yep.
And we weren't as prepared, like we talked about,
Sure.
as we should have been. Luckily,
Right.
the kid pulled through.
Okay.
But now, after having that incident, definitely the staff and our trainers are more aware. They look into the kid's history more. Like we said, we have tubs, and we have a team basically in practices and in games just in case something like that occurs again.
Got it.
So
So what? Permian? That's Friday Night Lights, right?
Friday Night Lights.
Yeah, that's Texas. That's football country. West
football
Texas.
country.
Yeah.
It's nothing but football. Out
Yeah.
there in Oregon.
High school football, right?
High school football is
Got it.
huge out that way. And,
Got it.
There's a
He's at the school, I think. Yeah,
there's a
he's at the
D2 out there
university.
that I was
Got it.
people's coordinator.
Good. Good. What about you, Coach?
I'm right here in Las Vegas, Nevada, Sierra Vista High School.
Cool. What's your name, Doc?
Jeff Long.
Okay, Jeff.
We have a trainer. However, that trainer is for all sports. And during the summer, you have soccer, cross country, football. So at any given time, that trainer might be called from all three sports.
Sure.
So even though we have one, I'm sure we could do better.
Yep.
And then I'm sure, like in some of your other states, y'all know how hot it gets, especially here in Vegas in the summertime.
Yeah.
So even with the buckets, with the baths, they're in the locker room. They're not out on the field.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So we would still have to fill that up, and so that's still time. So
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a process. Go ahead, Coach.
Brandon Allen, Oakland High School, Oakland, California. We ain't got shit.
Yep. Thank you.
So, our district can't afford shit. Our league can't afford it. My school, we don't have. My principal does not believe in supporting sports from a financial standpoint. The
Got
school's
it.
budget.
Okay.
We
You
have
at a public school?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So we have trainers on game days.
Yep.
But yeah, if that trainer shows up, we good.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
But
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
that's pretty much it.
Thank you. Yep.
Lonnie Walker, Mountain House High School in Mountain House, California. We with the assistant head coach, defense coordinator, with the head coach, we know we need a trainer, and we got trainers at other schools in the area that will be at practice and stuff. But our trainer only did like y'all come only on game day.
Got it.
And they could get one. The district I work for, they can afford it.
Sure.
It's not an issue.
Sure.
They special self need to see a need.
California is very interesting.
It is.
Yeah, I
It
just
is.
got off the phone with
Yeah.
what's you all's high school? What's your governing body?
Oh,
IJSC.
No, CIL.
CIL. I just had a meeting with the ED probably a week and a half ago, and after the conversation, it was like my head was spinning. Like, wow,
They got,
we got a lot to deal with in California because there's so much geographically,
It is.
temperature-wise, all that type of
it's
stuff.
different temperatures.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
three different.
Poison.
Hey man, I had a plan. I had a plan when we initially spoke because we really big on legislation.
Right.
And man, after that conversation with him, I was like, Wow.
Wow.
Like,
Yeah,
I felt deflated because he was saying like any Friday night, I may have 600 to 800 games across the
Right.
state.
Yeah.
And then if you look at Palm Springs or Palm Springs or Palm Desert?
Palm Springs.
He said Palm Springs, your games may not be till 9 or 10 at night because it's 100 plus
Yeah.
Oh,
all
the
day
same thing
long.
goes to
And that's
Nevada.
September
Yeah.
through October.
In Nevada, we hit 111, 110, 100.
We had to cancel, not us in Oakland.
Sure.
But if we had to play a game outside of Oakland in certain places, we couldn't play the game. We had to cancel the game.
So what would you either go late at night or early Saturday morning?
No.
The game just canceled.
Right.
No, we canceled the game this year.
Wow.
We played Monday, then played again Friday.
Wow.
That's what I'm saying was crazy.
Wow.
I couldn't believe that.
But
No.
you know what? The interesting thing, reality-wise, this is what America is comprised of.
Right.
You have literally 21,000 high schools across the country. They fall into two categories. Those that have athletic training, those that have resources versus those that don't have resources. That's the reality of what we live in. Now, the year started off kind of almost in a good scene, and I say with the Demond Hamlin scenario because, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I do want to make this clear,
Uh-huh.
make this plain though, because I talk shit about my district.
Sure.
They ain't shit. But our commissioner in our league though, he has made it very plain because he's fighting to get a trainer
Yep.
on every campus.
Yep.
So that's something that I would give my commissioner credit for.
Yep.
Is he's trying to fight to get at least one trainer
Sure.
on every campus for whatever amount of time a week, whatever. But he is trying to do that.
Got it. So basically what it boils down to, as I mentioned, these 21,000 high schools across the nation, you basically have those with resources, those that don't have resources. That's just flat out what it is. The reason I'm standing here because what we see, as I was mentioning in regards to the start of the year, when you look at the Demond Hamlin scenario, yeah, that's the NFL. They got all the resources in the world. However, in the real world, it don't go like that. If it went like that, I wouldn't be standing here. Literally, I would not be standing here if every incident or emergency action plan started like that. So as we go along, let's start off. This is what we came up with. I want everybody to give me your opinion, hold your questions to the end. The X's and O's of player safety, a playbook to keep your players safe both on and off the field. Okay, how to keep players safe before they even enter the game. All right, cool. So anybody know in layman's terms what an emergency action plan is?
Yes.
Cool. All right, now let's keep it in layman's terms.
Mandated in Tennessee.
Got it. And the interesting thing, they aren't mandated. That's what we really advocate for, to really create a baseline standard across the nation where they're mandated, not only mandated, but mandated to be practiced. So that was one of the things that we just got passed in Maryland, that they're mandated that they're practiced. Because again, keep in mind, that's like a CPR class. We all take a CPR class right now, and if we don't have any type of incident until 8 months from now, I guarantee you somebody gonna be saying, is it 32 compressions and 2 breaths, or 2 breaths, 2 compressions and 32 breaths? I guarantee it, because as adults, most of us have delayed retention. So the more we practice these things, obviously the more versed that we'll be on with it. So, can you go up, please? All right, so I'm not gonna get off, but I do want everybody to really focus on what's in yellow, because I know it's a lot of information. Emergency action plan is the equivalent of a fire drill. Layman's terms, for those of us, since all of us know the value of it, but it's a fire drill. Guess what? At the end of the day, when we constantly run fire drills in corporate America, you already know what door you want to go out of. We all know what the designated meeting area is. However, the interesting thing about sports is we know every day we walk out on the field, the potential for a fire is present every single day. So, EAP is the equivalent of a fire drill. It is the documented plan of action which is followed in the event of a medical emergency. So what we try to say, the NFL, basically they have resources. So you can have your 5 doctors or 10, 20 doctors meet an hour before the game and have an hour meeting on who's going to do what. That's not our world. That's not our world. So what we need to do, Coach, you in Oakland, Coach, Coach, which I want you to do, get this information and basically, so what we need, how big is your coaching staff? Got it. That's all you need. You know why? Because all you're going to do is designate. Are they there at every practice and every game?
No.
Got it. So some people had to double up. That's just the reality. Even with you, coach, guess what? Because see, what happens is a lot of times with us just having athletic trainers, athletic trainers mitigate our risks. They keep us honest, all these types, if you listen to them. But the interesting thing, you having one athletic trainer between 5 or 6 sports, and you may have, what's the significance there? You know what I mean? So again, that's your medical professional on the field, but if that's the only one you got between 5 events, how realistic is that? So the more that information that we have as coaches, because this is how I feel. If anything happens to a kid on your watch, it's going to be your fault.
It's your fault.
This is the sport where crap runs uphill. Y'all are CEOs of the company right now. So if you send your staff out and they're not properly trained, it's always going to come back to the training or the source of the information. So with your 5 coaches in general, let's go ahead and just 5 to 10 minute conversation before every practice and every game. Who will be responsible for dialing 911 in an emergency situation? Informing players and coaches of where emergency equipment is. AD, cold water towel, first aid kit is located. Items should be within 3 to 5 minutes reach. Did anybody see the last episode of HBO Real Sports? If you do, after this, please go check it out. This was the latest episode. Kid went down in Kentucky, 15-year-old basketball player. Coach yells out, go get the AED machine. So the kid that they're interviewing, he sent somebody else to get it. The kid they're interviewing, his buddy that was initially sent, asked him, go with me. He said, bro, what you want me to go with you? He said, because I don't know what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Wow.
So imagine they in the basketball gym, they got to run up to the front entrance of the school. They don't even know what they're looking for. They don't even know what an AED machine looks like. That 10 minutes, they came back, young man passed. Because in the cardiac arrest scenarios, time is of the essence. We saw that. Now we're in a space where everybody, especially you saw it on Monday night football, now you see what it looks like. Now, what so many families deal with, now the world sees. Coach, you made a good point, but you know a lot of times what I've learned, policies aren't acknowledged unless they're written in blood. That's when people acknowledge, like, oh, wow. But when y'all saw that with DeMar Hamlin, that happens all the time. A lot of times, it's just not such a swift response. So again, the more educated everybody is, the safer our kids will be. And I'll constantly, that'll be the takeaway you take with you today. So designating who will be responsible for guiding emergency personnel into the venue. So we're venue specific. Anybody know, this is a sport where we're venue specific. Anybody know what venue specific means? That means that all we really worried about is the football field, right? We ain't worried about the wrestling room. We ain't worried about, maybe the weight room or something. We ain't worried about the basketball gym. We ain't worried about the swimming pool. That ain't our thing. We're venue specific, the football field. So what that means is, guess what? When these things usually happen, we already know it's a gate. That gate should always be open. That gate should never be locked. Whoever got the keys, make sure you got access to them keys, because that's going to be the entryway for emergency personnel to come through. So that's going to be, out of your 5, one of your 5 people, that's going to be specifically their job.
To the gate.
To that gate, to wave them people in, all right? Because a lot of times, this is the thing, if we had a big school with resources, you may be at field 3. People might be coming to field 1. See, with Jordan that day, they switched and go to a practice field. Now the EMTs are basically saying, well, what field y'all at? We can't find you. Time steady ticking. That window was steady opening up. Henry said we only had a 20 to 30 minute window. They took an hour and 43 minutes to get him to the ER with a temperature of 106. That's how we went from healthy kid Tuesday to 85% of your liver being dead Friday. So that's another thing. Appointing who will be responsible for contacting the parent of the injured athlete. Coaches, man, I'm gonna tell you, I've been in that position. Now, here's a joker that sat at my kitchen table and said, I got you. I'm gonna take care of yours like he mine. But he ain't the one that called me when something happened to my son. Nah, man, he didn't call me. The coach didn't call me. I really don't get a guy, I don't acknowledge a guy, but we all know who he is. You see him in the media.
Yeah.
Nepotism at its finest, but you didn't call me. Campus police officer called me. I sent my kid with you. So be mindful of that. Or as parents, those of us as parents and students, imagine how you would feel. Okay, designated who will ride in the ambulance with the injured athlete. That's another significant thing. Appointing who will be responsible for crowd control, giving directions to the closest police department and fire station. Always know these things because a lot of times, guess what? It ain't always the kids. Parents can act stupid as well. And you know, we've seen that where he get the rumbling in the stands and all that. All of that falls in our emergency action plan. Designating who will stay at the venue with the rest of the team. Keep going, please. All right, emergency action plans like pre-snap huddles. They always, like a pre-snap huddle is like an all-pro left tackle. It works better when it gets a lot of snaps. The more you practice it, the more you're gonna get versed with it. Don't take it for granted or anything. All right, you can keep on. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this is what a well-executed emergency action plan looked like to save the Hammer. Hold tight. Cool. So this is what a well-executed plan looks like. The man went down, they were on him within them 3 minutes. Now, guess what? One of the interesting things is a well-executed plan going to save a life every single time? No. However, it will increase the statistics of that person living. Increases statistics by 58% that they got with him in that quick period of time and got him to the ER. Was it going to save his life? But it was a good shot that it potentially would. It was chances were higher that it would. Okay, this was just some of the media. He also benefited from the NFL's routine emergency medical drills held in stadiums before each game. Routine emergency medical plan safety, every practice, every game. The meeting is an essential checkpoint to ensure officials, team medical staff, and game day medical personnel are aware of all in-game player health, safety procedures, and resources, according to NFL player health and safety information. Sudden cardiac arrest is amongst things which they try to prepare as the leading cause of death. That's usually what it is. All right, so this is our defensive safety playbook. How to keep the players safe in practices and games. All right, now, unfortunately, mismanaged emergency situations end in unfortunate tragedies. A lot of times, this is my space, so I hear about every single death that you can imagine. I got people on my medical advisory board, my medical team, they just keep sending them. Bam, when they happen, they send them to me. There's a little girl that died the year after Jordan, Amani Bell. They were outside running, conditioning, doing dangerous temperatures of 100 and something degrees. Coaches got them out running bleachers. Unfortunately, Amani fell out, passed. I live between Georgia and Maryland. When I first came to Georgia looking for houses, I literally tracked their father down. High school football, girls basketball coach at a school down on the south side. Brother, when you're ready, just wanted to hug him, put some, some support around him, because unfortunately, this is a club none of us want to be in. As being locked, say a fraternity, we don't want to be in. But anyway, reached out to him, and I kept saying, when you're ready, just reach out. Every time COVID kicked in, every time I reach out, look, man, we doing this. We had to get really creative education-wise during COVID. He'd be like, all right, man, I'm gonna get with you. I'm gonna get with you. And I'm like, okay, no pressure. Hey, following year, somebody sent me this article where they charged the 2 coaches with murder. There was a parent, like I said, everybody may not be like me, standing up here, and I can turn this passion into a pain into a passion type process. Some people want more blood, bottom line. Now, do I really think that coaches or anybody in this room will sit here and genuinely say, maliciously wake up and say, I'm gonna kill a kid today? No. Because a lot of times it ain't even about the money for you all. It don't pay that much unless you're at that level. But a lot of you all are mentors. You try to help kids out. You trying to show them a better way. All these different things. We just so many different things as parents. However, one poor decision can change everybody's lives. So I want everybody to be mindful of that. Yep. All right, so as I just said, the temperature during that practice, according to the Bell's family attorneys, between 96 and 99 degrees Fahrenheit. And the heat index put the temperature between 101 and 106. Due to the extreme heat and humidity outside, Amani began experiencing signs of heat illness and was visibly struggling to physically perform the outside conditioning drills defendants directed her to perform. The lawsuit reads, defendants observed Amani experiencing early signs of heat illness during the practice, but nevertheless directed Amani to continue performing the conditioning drills with her team and directed Amani to run up the stadium steps. Man,
It don't matter.
this is the first day of practice.
Right.
Now, as a parent, you can't tell a parent how to feel. Especially when my child had told you they was all ready and you still pushed on. So I can't say y'all shouldn't have did what y'all did or made the decision that y'all made, right? Okay. Rockwell Health head football coach placed on leave after parents report student illnesses, hospitalizations. Texas, this was the coach a couple weeks ago. Very first day of practice after Christmas break, you done had your kids do 368, almost 400 push-ups in an hour. Everybody on the team, all of them that went to the hospital for rhabdomyolysis. Literally. You can't do these things, man. You can't do it, man. What was he thinking?
That's the problem.
But not only, but this is the thing. As a parent, I'm a parent first, advocate second, but not only do I put the onus on the coach, but I put the onus on parents as well, because see, this is where we got to emphasize self-advocacy. See, because somebody in there should have been like, you know what, coach, no, I'm done. But like I say, when you teach kids to be coachable, man, they just drink all the Kool-Aid, man, and it's just unfortunate that happens. A source told the WFAA that students became ill after strenuous workout that involved more than 300 push-ups over a 60-minute period, that the impacted students were diagnosed with rhabdomyolysis. Everybody know what rhabdo is?
No, sir.
Got it. Okay. So imagine when you're just coming back to the gym, you're pushing, and you know that onset, what they call, what is it? Help me out, Miss Nurse. Onset muscle soreness, where the muscles is just beyond, that's rhabdo.
Okay.
But when it happens quickly, that's rhabdo. And most people, they'll start off, ain't worked out in God knows how long, they try to get in the gym, and then they do too much or work with a trainer that pushes them too hard, and they don't come back for another month. That's rhabdo. Right, but a lot of times it can be extremely detrimental, because what happens is it builds these fluids up in your body, your liver can't process that acid. Right, and that's what it is. So again, when you got kids doing, just all types of,
Yeah, and they're not properly hydrated.
man, not hydrated, not acclimated. Guess what? We all know. I'm sure all of us go. Even I might not look like it. I do go to the gym. I live probably 5 days a week. Don't want to go 3 of the 5 days. I do go, but I still go. But guess what, man? I'm not sitting there throwing no hundreds or what. I ain't put 200-300 on the bar. I work my way to that, and that's really the main thing. Acclimation is key. But when we try to do too much too quick, and man, you got so many of these strength and conditioning trained, they may have a kid do 100 leg presses. Why? First day of practice. So that's rhabdo, and it becomes, man, that thing can become tragic, unfortunately, and ruin student athletes' careers. College football teams' punishment drills led to son's death. Parents say, stop right there. Let me ask y'all this, show of hands. Show of hands. Look, out of all transparency, the goal is to learn today. How many of y'all doing punishment drills? Yeah.
We run them, yeah. That's
Yeah.
I would say that.
Just somebody tell me why.
It could be disrespect for a teacher. It could be, like our bylaws. If they haven't turned in an assignment throughout the week, you know what I mean. They know they got a roll or bleachers, whatever it is.
Okay.
But disrespecting parents, they do their responsibilities at
Sure.
home.
Okay.
But yeah, that's usually why they get disciplined.
It's conduct.
Okay.
If you got academic issues, we send you to tutor.
Okay.
If you got conduct issues, we try to give you incentive drills to where you don't, incentive to act right. I don't say punishment, we say we give you incentive drills.
Coach October, because I can't imagine you giving somebody a punishment drill, but okay.
Yeah.
That's just women in the game, period.
Well, there's a lot of bear crawling involved.
Okay.
And a lot of running depending on where they're at.
Okay.
But I mean, the majority of the reason is you're not learning your plays, you're not studying,
Got it.
you're not keeping on with it, and
Okay.
it's showing, and you're like not contributing to the team. Like,
Got
that's
it.
our biggest reason.
Okay.
Well, ours mostly is really running.
Okay, why?
Why? Like I say, not like she said, same thing. Not executing plays, it could be discipline, not being on practice on time,
Right.
like that before, like the rolls and stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
Scared of that one.
Right. Go ahead, Coach.
It's all something. Professor emails me, so-and-so's missing class, or he showed up late to a workout,
Sure.
showed up late to practice,
Okay.
whatever it is, but if it's academic,
Okay.
they're handling their academic.
Got it. Got it.
But it's always kind of.
Okay. Let me ask, and let me ask this. when you execute punishment drills, does the whole team have to run for that one person's behavior?
So I do it on a basically a system of how many times you've had a conduct issue.
Sure.
So if it's happened like he has one or it's happened not that many times, then I'll just punish him.
Got it.
But if it continues to happen, I'll punish the rest of his position group and make him kind of watch.
Got it.
Them do
Ooh,
punishments.
okay.
And then from there, his teammates are having to, run for him and he's standing on the sideline
Sure.
watching him.
Sure.
Then
Right.
yeah,
Now-
Peer pressure.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, peer
Now,
pressure.
and I understand because I was talking to a coach last night, and basically he was saying it's the all for one mentality, or the one for all. But the interesting thing, and don't get me wrong, because one of the things, I'm not saying it's the right thing to do, but when we talk about prevention and stuff like that, really punishment drills, when you really don't focus on punishment drills, and I understand that's a part of football. However, a lot of kids die doing punishment drills. They become tragic. Now, a lot of you, everything you all saying, there has to be a level of accountability. However, just be mindful because a lot of times when, like Coach October says, a lot of bad crawls. And I was talking to a coach last night and he was saying he had a lineman that was 340 pounds and you started doing bad crawls for a punishment drill. Kid went out, had a heat stroke. So again, a lot of times be mindful of punishment.
Be reasonable.
Be reasonable,
Yeah.
right?
I will say, at least on the Power 5 level, when I was at Power 5 school, a lot of things that they used to do to us when
Sure,
I was a college
sure.
football player, they can't, we don't do.
Those, they were barbaric.
Yeah, as
Right.
far as the rules and everything, all of that is, you can't do that.
Sure.
But running a kid, of course, you can still do it, just within limitations of what the rules are, you can do certain things, but.
I like how everybody is politically correct
Oh,
in regards to
Almost half of
look, you all use these words, conduct.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah, even if he has poor conduct, like, okay, all right, cool. But again, be mindful in regards to that because one of the challenging things about advocacy, especially in this space, is changing the mindset.
Right.
That's it, changing the mindset. So a lot of times, man, just, really with some other information that I'm giving you, just kind of think about it and kind of incorporate it. Hey, look, you're part of the team, you got to be accountable. However, just be mindful of the potentials because, see, a lot of times as coaches, we're business people in a sense. We the CEOs. So a lot of times we literally had to see it in the worst case scenario. That's how we should look at things. Okay, if I do this, this is a potential thing of possibly what could happen, right? So that's just the reality. Take that nugget away with you today. Okay, University of Tulsa lets football coaching staff force team members to perform inappropriate punishment drills, which injured Devin Adair, who died the next day after receiving inadequate medical care from Eastern Oklahoma Orthopedic Center. Adair's parents claim in federal court. Now, interesting thing. Yeah, I feel like this. If you got that AT on the field that day, man, and the joker cutting up, you may have to just be strategic. I owned a business for years. You know how many people I really wanted to fire? And I literally I was in the mental health and substance abuse space. That's a very interesting business to be in. So again, when the counselors would do inappropriate things, man, in my mind, I'm sitting here saying, well, if I kick you out right now, look, I need that money from this day's, reimbursements. However, but in my mind, it's steady clicking. First opportunity, I get you a replacement, you gone. Right? Now, in this space, be mindful because at least if you have an AT on the field that day, it might not be immediate, but now I got somebody to cover my bet or cover my butt in the event that things do go wrong. So just kind of take that one with you as well. What?
Yeah.
Go ahead. Okay, cool. Sorry. All right, next one, please. All right, Hunter Midkiff. So these are just a couple young men that have passed, unfortunately, since George passed. Hunter was 6'1", 250-point guard. Defensive end, Pickett High School in Pickett, Arkansas. At practice, Midkiff collapsed, suffered a heat stroke. When he collapsed, Midkiff's temperature was 106.9. The temperature in Pickett was 90 degrees with a heat index of 105, according to the National Weather Service. Basically, he wound up going to Memphis, which is 53 miles. So a lot of times, keep this in mind as well. Even when we have safety equipment, right? Coach Brandon, even if you got a cold water tub, as we always say in this space, it's cool first, transport second. a lot of times what happens is you can put a kid in the tub, right? You're doing the right thing. Call 911, EMTs may come, and usually what happens is, depending on, and that's why it's so important to know the emergency action plans, because we need to know where the closest hospital is. We need to know where the closest police station or fire station is. Because keep in mind, this kid had to ride 53 miles to get to the closest hospital. What was he doing? It ain't like they had him in the tub the whole time he was in the back of the ambulance, in a sense. So a lot of times what can happen is you can put a kid in the tub, but you got to know the amount of time to keep them there, all these different things. But sometimes we can take kids out the tub too quick. What happens? Core temperature shoots right back up, so it really does a lot more damage when you take them out too quick. So we got to be very mindful, especially if somebody's on your team calling 911. Basically, you got to be very, very descriptive in regards to even the way you call 911, because a lot of times it could be a scenario where you say, hey, a kid on the ground, they'll send EMT basic, versus, man, the kid on the ground, he bleeding, he hyperventilating, he look like he got a broken arm, look like it could be a bone sticking through his leg, they're gonna send EMT advanced at that time. So what they're gonna do, they're gonna move quicker versus somebody, EMT basic, gonna have to wait for them to come anyway. So always be mindful in regards to whoever's calling 911 in your emergency action plan, be very, very mindful, or get into detail how they describe the incident. Okay, Zach Posenberg, again, he died the year before Jordan, 6'5", 320, and it was interesting because when I was getting in the elevator this morning, it was a 6'5" guy. I called him straight. I said, what, you 6'5"? He like, yeah. I said, what school you played for? He said he played somewhere in Florida. I'm like, what size shoe you wear? I knew him from the size, from his shoes, looked at his shoes. You wear 14, right? Because that was Jordan. Jordan was a 16. Literally the same size, 320, size 16 shoe. Same thing. Went down, unfortunately, they didn't have anything on the field that day. They didn't have a cold water tub or anything. So literally he died, man, his core temperature was 107 degrees. For more than an hour, transferred to the hospital in Miami where he died. And they went Riverside. So keep in mind, these distances play a major part. He was 16. Remy Hidalgo. Yep. I talked to Remy's mom a couple weeks ago. Obviously, Coach, you know this story. Same thing. And the interesting thing, with 106 degrees, 3 days after he collapsed, he died. He was 16. All right, so as I mentioned, the best defenses are disciplined. Some are led by the middle linebacker. He is considered the quarterback of the defense. He calls out pre-snap adjustments to his teammates before the ball is snapped so that the defense is in the best position to counter and neutralize the play that the offense is about to run. When it comes to player safety, knowing signs, symptoms, and treatment for various injuries is like having a great signal call in your linebacking core. Traumatic injuries usually occur during the first few days of conditioning practice. When we are eager to get back in shape, we sometimes neglect to pace athletes and give them time to properly acclimatize to the rigors and demands of the workouts and weather conditions. Coaches need to be aware of the following during conditioning season throughout the season. Be aware of an athlete's medical conditions. You just said it, Coach. Don't let nobody walk on your field if you don't know what their pre-existing medical conditions are. Don't do it. Sometimes parents lie too. Kids sign their own paperwork.
That's what happened.
Of course.
The mom, she knew he had a condition, didn't mention anything to nobody on the staff, and he had no ideas.
See, but again, in the event of, if that became tragic, now it's your fault. But mom, you were withholding in the information. See, you college coaching? So I'm sure all of us want to excel to the collegiate level. And one of the main things that I tell coaches, especially at the college level. Yeah, Raj. Okay, great, yep. One of the main things that I try to emphasize is when you go in a parent's home, even at the high school level, ask this parent every single thing. I want the kid, but I need to know everything. I want the kid, but I need to know everything. Because see, as a parent, you ain't asking no questions, I ain't gonna tell you no lies. I know he came in here high the other night, he experimented. But if you ain't asking, I ain't gonna say nothing. So you need to know a little bit about everything. As I mentioned with heat-related injuries, always move the person to a cool shaded area. It is a difference between heat exhaustion and heat stroke, right? Let me give you the basics. Somebody having heat exhaustion, coach, I'm cramping, I feel nauseated, I'm lightheaded. Now, heat stroke, I'm gonna give you one of the main indicators. If a person look like they drunk, they talking out their head, they ain't in their right mind, that's heat stroke. They throwing up, that's heat stroke. All right, keep going. As I mentioned earlier, in regards to body core temperatures, it's always cool first, transport second. Guess what? If you don't have, always make sure you got the basics. Cold water, ice towels. Cold water, ice towels. If you don't have a cold water tub, cold water, ice towels, you got to go with the second modality in regard to that. They start showing these signs. Never let heat stroke or heat-related injuries aren't bad things. Peak athletes have them all the time. However, when you ignore the signs and they get the heat stroke, that's when you're in the danger zone. Keep going, please. Always, as I mentioned earlier, always know who on your team has sickle cell, because see, sickle cell will present like it's a heat stroke. Unfortunately, it's not, because a kid with sickle cell, they need different work-to-rest ratios and things like that. Something to be mindful of. As the best saying goes, the best offense is a good defense. In terms of player safety knowledge, is your best defense. Knowing the signs, symptoms of treatment, and modalities for injuries will prepare you to win when they happen. Special teams playbooks. And at the end of the day, guys, coaches, always remember, the safer your kids are, the more chances you got of winning, right? The more, but not only the safer they are, but now we got to partner with kids. We ain't the same kids that we were. Some of us were. So the main thing, you got to give them a voice. Don't squash their voice. You know, really let them know what we say at the Jordan McNair Foundation: culture eats strategy for breakfast every day. And what I mean by culture, guess what? You got to show that I emotionally care about you, I physically care about your well-being, I spiritually care about your well-being. Then they buy into the concept of that. So you got to partner with a kid. Not saying they're going to get their way every time, but you at least got to hear them out. When parents, players, and coaches work together as a unit, they can prevent injuries from becoming tragedies. And that's our cool first, transport second. We created an inflatable tub. You been using it? Did you get out there?
I've used it. We actually had some big cold tubs too. We got them in conjunction.
Good stuff. And again, a lot of times those are good when you take them on the road with you and everything. So, man, questions? You know what? We ain't really donating them, but we give a discount. I'll give everybody a 20% discount.
I would say, could you roll back that last?
Yeah.
I want to write down that
Yes.
the name of the cold first.
Cool first train. I got some flies next door.
Okay.
I got some flies on the tubs. Yep. Any other
I'll say
questions?
that in Tennessee, we actually have heat index rules.
Yeah, man. That
as
what
well.
blow?
Yeah, so we got heat index rules where when you can't practice, if the heat index is certain,
Sure.
you can't practice, or you got restrictions. So if you're not following those, like I have to have a heat index monitor at practice every day.
Every day.
And have somebody monitoring it, somebody watching
Sure.
it. So in the summer when it does get hot, I mean, I don't know what,
Yeah,
Vegas in the summertime, boy, I don't know how.
But let me ask you this. Let me ask you a question. So that being said, I'm sure that's like a kid from Texas is going to be more acclimated than a kid from up north.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? A kid from Alabama, he's going to be more acclimated than a kid from up north.
Right.
You know, a kid from Vegas is going to be more acclimated. However, regardless of acclimation, you still got to give a kid 7 to 14 days, bottom line. And at the end of the day, always have somebody with some common sense on your team. Man, I spoke at one high school a couple years ago, and man, this coach made a very good thing. He said, all them freshmen, I don't know you, I don't know what you are capable of, so I don't run them. I'm like, damn, this is smart, because you ain't gonna mess our operate, you ain't gonna put us in a liable situation here. And that's the main thing. Keep in mind, you all are the CEOs of the team. Crap runs up, it don't run down.
When we do our conditioning tests, the
Sure.
older guys, we holding you to a standard.
Correct.
The younger guys, man, just finish.
Just
finish.
finish.
Hey, we not strict. Like I ain't telling them that.
Yeah.
But I'm telling my coaches, hey, we ain't riding them young boys, 'cause they don't know.
Exactly.
They not prepared.
Right.
To do that. The older guys, it's like, hey man, we
Exactly.
can do this and it's
Sure.
easy.
Of course.
But younger guys is like, hey man, we just working on them finishing.
Yep.
We just want them to finish something.
Yep, totally
So
agree.
it's a different mentality.
Totally
so as
agree.
they get older, then you can ask more of them.
Yep,
But
totally
I wouldn't
agree.
be mindful.
Man, but you got to know who your players are. And at the end of the day, it's always good to have common sense, a good moral compass, and common sense. Common sense will take you, even though they say common sense died a long time ago. However, look, I still think that we need to go ahead and exercise common sense, because see, a lot of times, them first couple days of practice, you're going to have a coach, somebody on your team say, you ain't ready, I can look at you and see you ain't ready.
Right.
You know what I mean? And again, from a liability perspective, the whole purpose of emergency action plans, athletic trainings, is to do what? Mitigate risk.
Right.
Mitigate the risk. It ain't to prevent something from happening, but again, it cuts down on the risk that could potentially happen. So again, keep that in mind, man. Like I said, I got some more information next door, and hopefully, man, everybody got something good out of it, man, for sure. You know, yeah,
Appreciate you.
I appreciate all of you, man. And again, you know, when coaches things like you say, everybody probably down at the offensive
standing out there
coordinator
talking.
thing.
Yeah, don't say ain't that many offensive coordinators, Brian. That's what I'm saying.
Thank you, everybody, for
Thank
sure.
you.
Appreciate
Much
your time,
appreciated.
brother.
Yes, sir. Thank
I know
you.
you don't need here, but man, sorry.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate you, man, for sure. Yeah, thanks, Coach. Pleasure, man. Yep, thank you. Yeah, we need it. Thank you. Pleasure, Coach. 25.
You working, you been working.
Yeah, or you can cash that. Thanks, Coach. Appreciate your input, man, for sure. Yep. Hey, thanks, Coach October. Pleasure, huh? Keep them safe, huh? Matter of fact, yeah, you can use cash app. Yep. I ain't been. My man, appreciate you, bro, for sure. Spread the word, Yeah, for sure, man. Yep. All right, Coach. Appreciate you, man. Yep.
Is a PowerPoint available? Is it, can I get a copy? Because our trainer does one, but you know,
Not like
different
this.
different voice.
Sure.
Another angle of it.
Coach, this is what I get paid the big money for.
I understand.
Call me. Hey, look, here, take my information. You know what, Coach? Why don't you go next door? It's some. I got some books and a flyer right there on the table. Yep. It's TJMF 79.
Thank you.
Yep.
Now,
Yes, ma'am.
Do you guys work with University of Michigan when it comes to concussion protocol?
No, we. However, we're for an organization called